Hey, it's been a while. Welcome back to Wrestle Cinema. It's my podcast where I talk about movies that feature pro wrestlers. It has been a minute. It's been what? Well over 4 to 5 months. We have technology. I could double check that. No, I don't want to hear about John Oliver. Let's see. What's the last time I did this podcast? Yes. Okay. The last time I did this podcast was in April, and it was a WrestleMania 41 preview. Oh, we did talk about a movie. In fact, we talked about Money Plane starring Adam Copeland. Well, if you're seeing this, shout out to you. If you're listening to this, it is a miracle that there's a movie review out. And it's because I'm talking about The Smashing Machine. The Rock does his first movie in such a long time where he's trying to take his acting career more serious and, try and get some, diversity in his portfolio, which, diversity is a trigger word because of MAGA. So anyone wants that's not a conversation we're going to get into. But the conversation we're getting into today is my little review on The Smashing Machine. Today is October 2nd. I just came back from the movies not too long ago, so we're going to talk about the movie. This is a 15-minute clip that I had that I was making this video for YouTube. It's going to be more trimmed down on the YouTube side of things, but I figured the full version will be available here on this feed, and this is going to just be straight to the review. And then I'm hoping next week we'll have another movie review, and so on and so forth. Because if you aren't aware, I do too much content, but then I don't do enough content. I have 3 different profiles, but then they don't get post regularly. But Joe Talk Cinema is my place for talking about all movies that aren't pro wrestling related movies. So you could go check out that content I'm doing over there, because for 31 days from October 1st to October 31st, I will be watching a different kind of horror movie, Halloween-esque movie. So feel free to go check that out on that Joe Talk Cinema Instagram, TikTok. Hopefully YouTube will have some content there. But yeah, so long story short is we're going to have some movies that have pro wrestlers in the horror-esque side, which means we should hopefully have a new episode of Wrestle Cinema once a week for the month of October. So we'll see what happens there. But enough of me talking. If you're still here, thank you so much, and let's hear the review. Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Joe, and if you couldn't tell by the title, we are reviewing The Smashing Machine, The Rock's newest movie. It's an A24 movie. It's a Benny Safdie movie. The guy that did Uncut Gems.
What is a muse?
I mean, I was Josh Safdie's muse when he wrote Uncut Gems.
Right. What is a muse?
I mean, I was Josh Safdie's muse when he wrote Uncut Gems.
Right.
He did the Good Times movie of Robert Pattinson, known for having some good movies. He was even in Oppenheimer. So, actor, director. And this is The Rock's first movie where he's actually trying to act in a long time. First time in a while, let's say. He's not being the Jumanji guy or the Fast Five guy or what's the other one? Skyscraper. The one where he beats a big ass gorilla. He's not doing any of that, and he's actually trying to take his acting career serious. You have to thank so much Black Adam for really ruining a lot of The Rock's momentum, because of Black Adam. We got The Rock to go back to WWE. It was cool for WrestleMania 40. Then he ruined the John Cena heel turn. I'm still not over that. I will never be over that. The Rock and Travis Scott really ruined that for me. But because of all that, now he's filming real movies. And here we are with an A24 movie, which is kind of crazy to say that The Rock is in an A24 movie. That is shocking. But if you haven't seen the trailer, this movie is about Mark Kerr, a former MMA fighter. He was in Pride. He might have, I don't know if he's done other forms. I know he originally has a wrestling background, and then he went into Pride and fought in Japan. And that's who The Rock is playing in this movie. So today is Thursday. It's opening night, and I went to go see the movie with my boy Finn. And I have my thoughts. I have my opinion. So let's get into it. For most of this video, I will be spoiler free, with my review. When I do have spoilers to mention, I will give you a warning on the top, and I'll even say it. So don't worry. But this will be, for the most part, a spoiler-free review. So overall, this movie is, supposed to be more of a drama for The Rock. This is supposed to be something to get you a little more emotion, some more range out of The Rock. Because when you look at all the actors, from pro wrestling to actors, there's three, obviously, that come to mind. Dwayne The Rock Johnson, the first to ever do it and become a blockbuster hit. Then you got John Cena and Dave Bautista. When you come into, because a lot of conversations over the last couple of years have been happening about those three. When you talk about actors, wrestlers turned actors with the most amount of range, you got Batista stealing the spotlight from the two of John Cena and The Rock. He is up there because Batista, he was the big guy. He was the heavy guy. I remember watching him in Smallville back in the day when he was still in the WWE. So then he did that. Then he did some other movies. The Man with the Iron Fist is one. Is that the name of the movie? I'm pretty sure that's the name of the movie. And then, Guardians of the Galaxy was his bigger break. Batista, incredible. John Cena is right there. There is a big gap, I'd say, because, John Cena has really been nailing comedy for him. He's already been the big guy. He fights. He does that. He's in Peacemaker, but, he's also comedic. He's also having fun. He's having a great time. He hasn't done anything serious quite yet. The most serious movie I think John has done is a toss-up between Legendary, when he's, his brother is, a wrestler and all that, a mat-based wrestler, collegiate wrestler. And then The Wall, where that's a very interesting war movie with Aaron Taylor Johnson. So yeah, John Cena right there. And then honestly, while The Rock is up there in terms of blockbusters and making hits, his acting is just one-dimensional. He's like, I'm The Rock. That's kind of all we're getting from The Rock. And, he's done some other stuff. I remember Walking Tall is one of my favorite Rock movies. I think it's Southland Tales, another good one. The Game Plan, incredible movie by The Rock. Needless to say, I'm ramping about his other films that he's done, because that's really important to talk about when you think about this movie and his decision to do a movie like The Smashing Machine. So it's really nice to see that he's taken a break from all the stuff. Black Adam really messed with his head, I'd say, because he thought he was going to, flip the DC universe upside down. And instead, they said, we're done here and we're rebooting everything. The Smashing Machine. I would say the story itself was good. I really, I think the whole thing about Mark Kerr fighting, addiction, his whole relationship with Emily Blunt, who played a really great job. Emily Blunt, I really have no notes for her because she did the great job, supportive, sports wife, if you want to call that, fighter wife. She's just trying to be there for them. But unfortunately, Mark Kerr, he just doesn't want her in there. He's fighting his own battles. And no matter how much she wants to get in and help, he's just not doing it. And they're truly not compatible for a lot of this movie. At least that's what they're showing. They got a lot of issues going on. He has a lot of issues, and they just can't. They're not working. They're not working. So you deal with a lot of seeing his addiction. You see his relationship problems, and then he's fighting this thing of all of that is getting in the way of his fighting, and that's kind of the most you get in terms of plot to really sink in. I'm gonna be honest. When I saw the promotion for this movie, especially The Rock does a great deal of promotion for anything he does. So, he's never going to say anything he's doing is a small thing. But when leading up to this movie, I was okay, The Rock is trying to, maybe he's trying to be the most serious actor now. He went from making the most money to being the biggest draw in Hollywood to now I'm okay, maybe he's done enough of that and he's looking for more. Now he wants to take his acting serious. He's doing an A24 film with Benny Safdie. Now he's gonna, he has a Martin Scorsese movie in the works. I believe Leo is also in that movie. So it's interesting to see now with The Rock trying to take his roles a bit more serious. And with this, as I said, the promotion from The Rock and how it was told to me, or at least not how it was told to me, but how I accepted how this movie was going to be. I'm oh, this is going to be The Rock's, the wrestler, Mickey Rourke's the wrestler. This is going to be his, version of that through MMA. And maybe that's what The Rock wanted it to be. But I'm going to be real. I don't think it was. I don't think The Smashing Machine is the emotional hit and going to drive people to the box office the way it was promoted to be, or at least the way I accepted the promotion for this movie to be. I think this is a good tale about, someone just struggling and trying their best to fight their addiction, to fight their demons. But there's no real critical drama outside of him just trying to, get past his biggest enemy, which is himself. So I just didn't have it, because when you look at The Wrestler with Mickey Rourke, you see that he's a defeated man. You see that he's down on his luck. You see that nothing's going his way. His family doesn't want to do anything with him. He's fallen down the wrong path and he's trying his best to get out of it, but nothing's working. And, with this movie, you see he's fallen down a wrong step. He's not off the wagon quite yet. But, clearly it does go south for him, but it doesn't really linger there too much. There's a moment in the movie where something, dramatic, very dramatic happens in the more of the beginning arc, the beginning portion of the movie. And, that happens. They deal with it. They deal with the post issues. But that's kind of it. It's always something they talk about in the background, but it's not much of a emotion-driven scene as much as I believe it should have. I think, because they don't show a lot of what happened in that scene that led to all this, downfall, I think that took away from the pulling of the heartstrings that I think was necessary for this movie. If we would have saw what happened to Mark Kerr that, led him to, having issues. I think that would have been more impactful than kind of just seeing Emily Blunt's character talk about it to his trainer, his friend, and then they kind of go past it all. So that's what I'm going to say there. And obviously for the spoilers. So spoiler warning. Obviously I'm talking about when he's in the hospital because he had a heart issue going on with the steroids he's taking. I think if they just would have shown him like maybe convulsing or, passed out, or we see the sequence of him getting all messed up and then boom, he's out on the ground. I think that could have provided a bit of drama that this movie needed. We're still in the spoiler window, so if you are watching this, skip ahead. I do think the most drama that came out of this and the most invested I did get into this movie was when Emily Blunt's character pulls out a gun and she's going to, end it all because of the fight she's having with Mark Kerr. At that moment, I was like, whoa, what's going on? I remember I was like, I'm not a loud person in the theater, but I audibly went, whoa. So I think that could have, that is something that also, that was a short moment. It was an intense moment. But I think if they could have, had more of that kind of situation, maybe not that, but just something more emotional to really get me to feel for this. Because at the end of the day, I was like, wow, Mark Kerr is going through a lot, but he still gets to fight at the end of the day. We don't see a real training montage where he's suffering and he's trying his best. He kind of just trains and he lifts, and we do get a training montage, but it's when he's clean and, it doesn't look like it's that big of a struggle for him to do his workout and get ready to go fight in the biggest tournament of his life. All right, spoilers are over. We're going to, if I talk about it again, I'll bring it up. But okay, so yeah, I just think that this movie lacked some emotion when I think it could have used a bit more. I know it's a true story and you can only do so much before you take it out of, what's reality, what happened for Mark. But there were just some things that they could have, maybe just sat on a little bit more versus how they went, where they, a dramatic moment happens or happens in the background and they kind of just go past it. I think that could have changed my feelings for the movie. But yeah, overall, I think this is a good start for The Rock to move forward in terms of his acting career. I'd say he's been making millions and millions of dollars, but he's been really stagnant with his growth in terms of an actor. He's very one dimensional for many, many years. And this is the first time in a while where he's stepping out of his comfort zone and trying to do something else. And I have major respects for Dwayne, for Rocco, for really trying to do something that isn't just the guy from Jumanji, the guy who just has to have a lot of muscles on him. He did have a lot of muscles in this movie, but I do enjoy the fact that it wasn't about the muscles. It wasn't about him being the strongest there ever was. It was like him trying his best to fight addiction, to fight the issues he's having in his relationship, to fight himself. I think they could have done a better job at showing that more, besides him just trying to really warm up for this big fight. So, needless to say, would I recommend this movie to others? I would say this is a great movie to wait for it to come out on streaming. I know I'm a big guy. I'm a big proponent of going to the theater. I have AMC A-List for a reason. Please sponsor. But this is one of those movies where I was like, I walked out of the theater. I enjoyed it, but I could have waited for this to be on streaming because it's not a movie I'm saying, go rush to the theaters for. I think this was still a good movie. It was solid, but it just didn't live to the expectations that I had. And that's just maybe my own fault, but I'd also say based on how it was marketed, I think I was expecting to get The Wrestler when I got something, I don't know, a job? No, not a jobber, but somewhere 3 levels down from The Wrestler. But hey, Rock, shout out to you for doing something different in your career, and I hope you continue to do this. It would be really cool if one day he gets an Academy Award for a really good role. I'm really excited still. After seeing this, I will say I am still excited for his Martin Scorsese movie where he's going to be playing this Hawaiian mob boss, and I think that's going to be a cool dramatic tale. I hope The Rock continues to do movies like that because that will really set him apart from everything else he's done. And if he does want to be considered one of the best actors ever, he needs to diversify his portfolio. So yeah, I would go on Letterboxd, which I did, and I gave this a 3.5 out of 5 stars. But hey, go check it out for yourself. You can wait till it's on streaming. If not, I'm sure you can go to the theaters and catch it yourself. But hey, that's my takes. Let me know your thoughts. I will be talking more and more about movies on this channel, along with my movie channel, Joe Talk Cinema. So if you're watching Wrestle Cinema, this is where I'm doing wrestling content, wrestling video game content, movies on professional wrestling, which we're going to be doing more. We do have a podcast, Wrestle Cinema, that we're trying to get back into the swing of things. So go check that out. And then, yeah, with the whole movies of October, if you aren't aware, I will be doing a movie a day where I'll be reviewing and talking about it on my social media. So at Joe Talk Cinema, at Joe Talk Cinema, to go follow all movies that I'll be posting about in October. I just watched the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I got movies like The Fly to watch, Leprechaun, so you name it. It'll be fun to watch all these movies I've never seen. But yeah, long ass in exit to say, hey, thanks for watching. Let me know your thoughts on The Smashing Machine. Peace.